We're in the Western Ghats. That's in the southwestern part of India, south of the Deccan Plateau and a little bit west of it as well. This area is a biodiversity hotspot. There are giant squirrels back here, for example, and by giant, I mean these things are 2 feet long. But mammals aren't the area's forte. This particular area gets rain that is some of the heaviest in the world. And the result of that is they have a fine collection of reptiles and amphibians. Some of the amphibians can actually fly, reptiles too for that matter. The gliding frog that you see has 4 parachutes that he carries with him, and he uses those to go from place to place up in the trees. The little dragon does essentially the same thing, except that it spreads its ribs apart and glides along from place to place, sometimes hundreds of feet away from its original location. In medieval times, people used to take these little dragons back to Europe and tell the Europeans that these were baby dragons. Well, they're not exactly baby dragons. The adults are only a few inches long. Of the iconic species in the Western Ghats, probably the easiest one to see is the flying dragon. It's not terribly afraid of people, and it likes to show off. In this case, it's showing off a yellow throat patch. Now, usually when a lizard is showing off this sort of throat patch, he's trying to attract a girlfriend. But in this particular case, that yellow throat patch looks enough like a flower petal that insects get confused and they come over to check it out. And when they do, the dragon snaps them up. Dragons usually start out relatively low on a palm tree, and they work their way up higher and higher until they're very high up into the tree near the top. At that point, they usually push themselves away from the tree, spread their ribs, and glide to a lower point on a nearby tree. Several types of frogs and snakes do essentially the same thing. Because of the relatively high temperatures and high rainfall in the Western Ghats, this area must be heaven for all kinds of amphibians and reptiles. There were dozens of different kinds of lizards in the area, and many, many different kinds of frogs and toads. I had initially thought that this next scene was 2 males fighting, but apparently there's not much difference between fighting and mating. This next isn't a lizard, it's a skink, but the forest is full of them too, and both the lizards and the skinks are basically snake food, so that's going to be helpful in our search for snakes. The other iconic creature in the Western Ghats that's relatively easy to find is the giant squirrel. Now, like any squirrel, they tend to move around quite rapidly, and because they're edible, they tend to like to hide. This squirrel thinks that he's hidden. Frankly, he looks a little bit more to me like a guinea pig with a long tail, but nevertheless, he thinks that he's hidden, and so he's being very still for me. And next we're going to be seeing the tail, which we haven't seen much of. For the most part, the dragons and the squirrels were relatively easy to see. Other things were quite hidden, and we had to poke around for them. And because we're looking for venomous snakes, we're being especially careful where we poke. In this particular case, though, we don't find a venomous snake. We find something else that's quite interesting, however. Underneath the last palm frond, there was a nice big green bottle scorpion. And I'm going to show you a picture of the scorpion in daylight, the way that we saw it, and also how it appears at night. Because under ultraviolet light, a scorpion will fluoresce, making them very easy to see. With the scorpion, you can tell how powerful the sting is by how large the claws are. The smaller the claws, the more powerful the sting.
Dance on your own dime, will you?
One of the scorpions just stung me. Am I gonna die?
How big?
Huge.
Good.
Good.
Comes to scorpions, the bigger the better. Small one bites you. Don't keep it to yourself.
We also ran across a large centipede, the likes of which I'd never seen before.
Giant centipede?
No, just centipede. I also found out that India has tarantulas, which is something I hadn't heard before. This camera picks up infrared light, light that I can't see and that the animals can't see either. The light that you're looking at right now is the light that the camera itself puts out. It puts out this light in order to be able to figure distances and ranges and work out the focus. But I've got a couple of other little lamps with me. I want to show you just exactly what they'll do. This one right here is an infrared lamp that's an auxiliary. And you can see that lights up things pretty well. But this light right here, this is an infrared spotlight, and it'll really light up the night. If there's anything out there, we ought to be able to find it.
My God, it was beautiful, huh? The gecko was.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Don't give your hand here. Have you seen the spiders? Yeah. I love it. Now bring in some rain. Not some.
This next insect is a walking stick. It's called that simply because it looks very much like a stick. This one is pretty good size. The largest one we saw at night was about a foot long, and those are getting to be quite rare. A maximum size for a walking stick insect worldwide is about 2 feet. Lots of city folks have never seen this, so I thought you might find it interesting.
Put a little finger in.
As I think you've already heard, the Western Ghats has plenty of frogs and toads.
purple frog, otherwise known as the Indian purple frog or pig-nosed frog, can be found in the Western Ghats in India. The adult frog was formally discovered in 2003 by S.D. Bijou, even though the tadpole had been described as early as 1918. The frog is considered a living fossil, with its closest relative in the Seychelles. This relatedness suggests that their ancestors lived around 100 million years ago and adds to the evidence that Madagascar, the Seychelles, and India were once connected. Shaped similarly to most frogs, it does have a more rounded body with a small head and unusual pointed snout. They are typically dark in color, with the males being about 1/3 the length of their female counterparts. The frog spends most of its year underground, only to surface during monsoon season for about 2 weeks for the sole purpose of mating. Most burrowing frogs emerge to feed above ground. However, the purple frog forages underground for termites using its fluted tongue. This reclusiveness may have aided in their survival of 4 mass extinctions. The purple frog is classified as endangered and is endemic to the Western Ghats, found primarily in Cardamom Hills of Kerala State and Katapana, where loose, wet, and aerated soil near ponds, ditches, and streams, a choice habitat for this once-in-a-century find, is abundant.